With my new awareness of how racism and ethnocentrism operate in today's world, I will discuss the relationship between racism and the education system in Canada. In introducing this topic, it is important to note that racism does not always present itself in the stereotypical manner, that is, through overt repression, segregation, and the use of racial slurs. In fact, contemporary racism can be present on an individual, ideological, and systemic level within the education system. But before I dive into my analysis, the following information has been taken from lectures, as well as Chapter 8 of the course textbook entitled Color of Democracy, written by Francis Henry and Carol Tator. To begin, racism in the education system is most prevalent through what is referred to as the hidden curriculum. The hidden curriculum includes educators' personal values, assumptions, and expectations of students, which are typically aligned with the social and cultural environment of the school itself. It is this curriculum that covertly perpetuates notions of hegemonic whiteness and further marginalizes minoritized students. Although the hidden curriculum is ideological in nature, in the example of individual racism within the education system, it provides the standards against which all students' behaviors are compared. When minoritized students feel as though their personal needs and cultural forms of self-expression are discouraged, ignored, or even prohibited, they often engage in what Bear refers to as a gaze-glare relationship with white authority figures. The concept of the white gaze is deeply associated with the constant surveillance students of color experience within the education system. In response, these students of color may return the glare by exhibiting the behavioral and physical qualities, like choice of dress, that are commonly condemned by the rules enforced within the specific educational institution. As a result of this perceived deviance or rebellion, educators tend to punish minoritized students more harshly than white students, despite partaking in similar behaviors. This is exemplified by a study conducted for the Halifax Regional School Board that concluded that in Halifax, by the time Black students reached high school, 40% of those students had been suspended at least once. In turn, this explains why educators may automatically assume that racialized students are more likely to be responsible for deviant behavior and punish them more often and more harshly, thus further contributing to the stereotype that racialized students are the troublemakers in the classroom. On the other hand, the formal curriculum consists of content expressed through educational materials such as choice of textbooks. Oftentimes, the history communicated in these textbooks offers an extremely Eurocentric perspective of Canadian history. This form of systemic racism not only paints minorities as primitive and deviant peoples, but it preserves the racist ideologies and attitudes disseminated through course material, if it even addresses minority involvement at all in Canadian history. Furthermore, by failing to establish an anti-racist dialogue, educators are not only preserving racist ideologies, but failing to introduce historical figures with whom racialized students can identify. These implicit messages, disseminated through course material, communicates to minoritized students that Eurocentric history is more important to the study of Canada and their people have nothing positive to contribute. When students cannot identify with the content they are learning, they are less likely to engage in the material. In turn, minoritized students seek their value elsewhere, as the Eurocentric education system has made it clear that they offer less than the rest of us, which ultimately contributes to the widespread ideology that minoritized students belong in vocational or low-level academic programs. An example that I believe accurately represents racism in the education system is the case of Sam McNair, a Black student who is suspended for the remainder of his senior year of high school for hugging his teacher. Not only does his punishment not fit the crime, but the information included in the media report closely reflects the racist ideologies that circulate within the education system. Firstly, in an interview with McNair's mother, she emphasizes the importance of her son receiving a full athletic scholarship in order to attend college. This statement is reflective of an assertion made in the textbook that the desire to play sports is the primary motivation for minoritized students to remain in school. Although that message may not have been her intention, it is indicative of the messages sent to minoritized students, specifically young Black men. Because educators do not expect them to excel in academia, they may redirect their focus towards sports rather than amending the racism apparent in the formal curriculum. Secondly, the news report alludes to McNair's prior disciplinary record and his previous suspensions as a means to justify the extremity of the punishment to the public. As previously mentioned, the perception that minoritized students are more prone to deviant behavior contributes to the likelihood of regular, harsher punishments when compared to white students. All that said, there are numerous ways in which intentional action can be used to make a change in the racist tendencies within the education system. As discussed in lecture, it is important that minoritized students feel as though they can identify with the material they are learning, as well as with who is teaching it. The increased visibility of non-white educators may encourage non-white students to interact with course materials from an unexplored perspective. By this I mean non-white educators may be more likely to approach a specific topic without the same racist ideologies white educators might. A major resolution to racism in the education system is to mobilize privilege towards minoritized parents and communities in addressing concerns of racism within the formal and hidden curriculum. Parental involvement across all races is often reduced once students enter the school. By initiating a dialogue that emphasizes the important role of parental involvement, parents may become more aware of the systemic racism within the formal curriculum. This increased awareness is more likely to inspire amendments to the material that is taught to all students on a daily basis. Lastly, it is important to educate educators how to be culturally aware. Because the majority of educators are white and are less likely to find issue with the formal curriculum as they are able to identify with it. Training educators on anti-racist and anti-discrimination practices may heighten levels of sensitivity not only to the teaching the material, but also in properly addressing the disengagement of minoritized students as a result of the systemically racist course material.